BetOnline is your number one source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your home, right from your phone. Head to the website or use the mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use promo code Bleav for your 50% welcome bonus. Again, that's BLEAV for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts. Bleav in the Arizona Cardinals. It is the Arizona Cardinals centric specific show where, of course, we talk about the Arizona Cardinals here in the Phoenix metropolitan area. I am one of your co-hosts. I am Javon J. Love Adams, and with me, as always, is a man who played professional baseball, also played in the National Football League as a part of that first Atlanta Falcons bound, Super Bowl bound team. He's an author. He is a motivational speaker, none other than Ed Easy Smith. What's good, man?
Really, man, we're on the countdown. The training camp's opening. I can't believe, man, we are almost into July. Just a few days. We'll be hitting that July 4th holiday. And then you're talking about just a matter of a few weeks before camps start opening up and preseason games kick off, the first part of August. So it's coming, man.
It is coming. And today there's a couple different topics that I want to get in on. One, I want to talk about Isaiah Simmons. It will segue into, or it'll be a part of a discussion that came across. This is that time of the year where you have those lists that come out in that dead part before training camp begins. But Pro Football Focus had a couple of lists in terms of defensive, in which the Arizona Cardinals rated very low. So the defensive line and also the secondary. And so I wanted your thoughts on that. And that's when we're talking about the secondary now, we're going to be talking about, of course, Isaiah Simmons being a part of that group. I wanted you, since you played the game, if you could tell me what a West Coast offense is, because we know Drew Petzing is going to be the offensive coordinator. He's talked about some different things about how he looks at wanting to have his offense ultimately be, but he comes from that. I think his DNA is based in that West Coast offense. So I wanted to see if you could make me a little bit smarter. So let's get into the first part of that. The Isaiah Simmons. So he's going to be he's going to be in the secondary, in that secondary group. So he's in that room. There was an article that came about again just recently with Pro Football Focus mentioned the secondary. The Isaiah Simmons maybe having some strong points, but also he's a wild card within that. So as you talk about Isaiah Simmons, also I'm curious if you had to choose between what's more important, defensive line or secondary, when it comes to the Arizona Cardinals, which one needs more attention based upon how it's currently constructed, what would that be? So take it from there.
Oh, so we're talking offensive or defensive line versus our secondary.
Yes, sir.
We talked about this earlier, and you and I have always been right on point in terms of having the same philosophy, and the game starts up front for me, offensive and defensive line. For me, the most important unit, if we're talking defensively, if we're talking offensive, obviously it's offensive line. For me, it's the defensive line because.
And you are consistent with that. You have been consistent with that for years. Ever since we started, even when we were just on the Easy Sports Talk Show, you have been very consistent with your philosophy on that.
If you cannot get at the opposing team's quarterback, I don't care if you have the best secondary in the world, eventually somebody's going to come open. They're going to find that weak spot in your secondary. We all know we've had our tight ends have just eaten us up over the last few years. And like I said, you got everything covered out on the edges, deep. The middle of that field is eventually going to come open if you don't get pressure on somebody's quarterback, in my opinion. And that starts with edge rusher and pressure up the middle. You see how it affects us with our quarterback. He gets real skittish when he gets stuff coming at him and they can't get out of contain. But, for me, it definitely starts with getting some push. We've given up and lost a lot of talent on that defensive line. So for me, this is going to be a long year. And here's the other part. Don't let me forget this part, Jay. If you can't get pressure and you also can't stop the run, what does that equal? That equals disaster.
Mm.
And that's, people forget about that part because we've gotten to a point where it's all about the passing game. It's all about the passing game. Some teams will come in here and they will be like last year, they will beat us up in the running game, 150 plus yards on the ground. What does that lead to? It leads to you having to bring people down from the secondary into the box, which leads to play action, which then leads to plays over the top. So it's a formula for disaster when you don't have a front that can at least cause some type of discomfort. I'm not even going to say chaos. We see what happens when you can cause chaos with Aaron Donald, with the Rams. He wreaks havoc up in the middle sometimes. Just his presence alone can cause stuff to happen that's not normally going to happen.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, though, since you mentioned an Aaron Donald. With B.J. Ojulari, he's the rookie edge coming in at that edge position. Is out of all the positions, I'll just ask it plainly, is edge rusher one of those positions where you can just kind of pin your ears back and then just go after it? Or is there some technique and some more subtleties to that position
to
be able to see immediate success?
Yeah, it's technique. And obviously I was on the other side of the ball as a tight end, but I used to see those edge rushers. For edge rushers, people in college a lot, especially in college, they sometimes would throw the ball 50 and 60 times in these games where, they're blowout. And these dudes can just pin their ears back and come. Think about a guy from, just pick a big school, Alabama, Georgia. You're playing against teams that are always coming back from big deficits because you're on top. So what do they got to do? They got to throw the ball. You pin your ears back and you come. In the NFL, they watch tape. If all you are is a dude that wants to get out the quarterback, they'll find you and they'll expose you. They'll expose you. They'll start, letting you get your bull rush on, throw you by, and there's screens on the outside of you. There's tight end or delay, handoffs to get in that seam that you're vacating. You better be, when you come into this league, and that's why a lot of guys don't pan out at the position because they have one thing on their mind. Let me get to the quarterback. Let me get to the quarterback. Okay. Those guys, as an edge rusher, you do have second duties. It's not like, hey, just go get the quarterback. No, you got to be a dude on the outside that's setting the edge. How many times do we talk about that? If you're allowing dudes to throw you inside, or if you're constantly leaking in, but you're supposed to have outside contain and they're sealing you, there's a lot of runs getting around the corner of that formation, So when you come to the league, that's something that these young guys have to learn. They got to learn that they're dual responsibilities now, not just get after the quarterback. And it's complicated. That's why you see a lot of when younger guys coming off the side and coaches grabbing them because they got to talk to them, because it's a learning process. And as much as, like I said, they want to get after the quarterback, they do have other duties to do. And to wrap up the other thing, when we're talking about our front versus our secondary, that secondary is going to be severely taxed if we don't get pressure. And we were exposed last year, and think about, we're coming in with an even more decimated roster because they either let go of guys. It's a total rebuild. There's going to be some guys that are going to be really exposed for what their abilities are, meaning unless they can figure out a scheme that protects guys, because we're not going to be able to get after the quarterback. We're going to see a lot of passes over the top, passes caught in the middle of the formation. Guys going to be out of position because they're just not. There's a whole lot of things that have to be learned between, obviously, with the break after your OTAs and mandatory minicamps. Now is the time when guys are away. They'll be coming back. Next time these guys are going to be in these playbooks is going to be training camp. And with the lack of hitting, the lack of speed, a lot of guys are going to be learning on the fly in the regular season because there's not going to be a lot of action in the preseason. So it could be, it's going to be, in my opinion, it's going to be pretty ugly to begin. We'll see how fast some of these guys catch up and what the scheme looks like, because we still don't know what it's going to look like.
So earlier on, Bleav in the Arizona Cardinals, earlier when we recorded our Easy Sports Talk Show podcast, make sure you search for that, Easy Sports Talk Show. But when I mentioned this, I'm curious, you kind of pointed this out. One of the things, you pointed something out that kind of made me feel a little bit more, I guess, at ease about this particular player. So Isaiah Simmons, they moved him all around. He was that jack of all trades. He's that guy that can do everything. And so because they said that he could do everything, he's never really become super comfortable doing one thing since they tried to have him do so many things. But he's in that cornerback. He's in the cornerback group, so he's in that secondary position. My concern was, man, is his head going to be swimming, because now he's going to be in the secondary room as opposed to when he was in linebacker, so forth and so on. And you pointed out something that was very appropriate when it came to Isaiah Simmons, that in terms of his head spinning. Do you remember what that was?
Yes, I do.
Right,
Everybody's head's going to be spinning because it's a brand new defense for everybody, except for guys that are coming over from the Philadelphia Eagles. I think we signed a couple of those guys again and brought them over. So guys that are familiar with the system will be ahead of the curve. But for the rest of the guys, Isaiah Simmons, Zaven Collins, even Buda Baker, they're all going to be starting from ground zero learning. So if the organization is smart, you get a Jack like a Simmons, like a Zaven Collins, you specifically want them to do certain things, learn a position before you start throwing multiple things at them. So for Isaiah Simmons, this is a brand new start for him, and it's also a put up or shut up. We need to see some production from him. I think he will be at an advantage now because I don't think they're going to ask him to do 4 or 5 different things. They're going to say, here's your room, you stay in it. Then once we get you comfortable and you are flourishing, then we can add little bits and pieces along the way. But I think they did an injustice in the first couple of few years that we've had Simmons, with them throwing him around everywhere and not giving him the opportunity to learn something specific. Meaning, for me, I personally think he should be a linebacker. I'm not so sure about secondary. Linebacker for him would be perfect. He's a little he's a tweener, so doesn't have a whole lot of lead in them britches. So he's not what I would call an anchor linebacker, but man, he could be a hybrid linebacker, covering these tight ends and different things. Yeah, I guess you can do that with the secondary as well. The problem for me with being in the secondary, if you have him at safety or something like that, he's so far away from the ball. I want somebody like him as close, and maybe they'll have him, utilize him where he's a floater, and like a Buddha, they'll be putting him in the box and doing different things. But the closer we can get him to the line of scrimmage to use his ability as a mismatch in coverage, and then if you want to sneak him up there to be a rusher, I think the better. But the good thing is, I'm hoping they are smart enough to give him something specific to chew on, to learn, and to be the best version of himself, and then branch out from there. Let's not have this dude lining up in 20 different spots across the formation.
Okay. So Bleav in the Arizona Cardinals. Now it's time for Ed to teach me something. All right. Because Drew Petzing, one of the first things that he mentioned is that they want to be unpredictable. Yeah. They want to be able to, ultimately, on the offensive side of the ball, they want to be able to adjust and morph into whatever they need to do to win based upon who the opponent is. So that way they always keep their opponent off kilter, off balance, because they don't know what to expect. Are we going to run the ball? Are we going to do, is it short passing? Is it going to be trying to push the ball down the field? Whatever it might be. But again, some of his DNA is in the West Coast offense. What can you tell me about maybe the good and the bad? Let's start with the good. What are some of the strengths of a West Coast offense? And then when we meet on our next episode later this week, we're going to get into more kind of how Kyler Murray seems to be impressing the new coaching staff. But for the purposes of this, let's start with what the strengths of the West Coast offense are.
The strengths of the West Coast offense are it's a short passing game, and it's a rhythm passing game. We see different versions of it. I actually played in one many years ago, not even realizing what it was at the start, because it was kind of all over the place with Andy Reid in '99 with the Eagles. But he had a young rookie quarterback. We weren't the most talented team out there. I was in it. It was different, from other things I'd done. It's a lot of, I don't like to call it dink and dunk, but it is, there's a yardage strike basically that's more favorable to, let's say, 12 yards and in. It seems like
Okay.
everything is in that area. And like I said, it's in rhythm. It's guys getting to a certain depth on their routes,
Okay.
timing. Whereas, some offenses, think about the old days with the Raiders, and just they were trying to get as deep down the field as they could, which meant
Yes, sir.
7-step drops. In that offense, there's not a lot of 7-step drops. There's a lot of 3 and 5. So it's a quick game. Now, the advantage also for that, it takes the pressure off of your offensive line because
Okay.
they're not having to block for long periods of time. This is 3 steps, boom, hit your read, get it out. Yeah, and your reads are maybe a complication of the offense is it's quicker reads. It's boom, boom, boom instead of 7-step, boom, 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 because you might be going levels.
Got you.
In the West Coast, it's first guy at 5, second guy across the middle, third guy outlet. Boom, it's like boom, boom, boom. You got to be on point. That's why Brock Purdy he was a shocker because one, he picked it up so well. This dude must have been he must have had his own personal lab at home where he was just, and obviously a 7-round pick, everything stacked against you. This dude, he was living, eating, breathing football, obviously, because he was in that playbook studying. And they put him in there. He was like, boom, boom, boom. He was, that, and like I said, that's the advantage of the West Coast offense. And the running game, you have, in my opinion, with the West Coast offense, you have to mix that in there. You've got to be consistent with running the ball because if you're 3 and 5-step drops, all of a sudden that becomes very predictable. And you got, cornerbacks jumping routes. You got linemen or defensive linemen at the 3 and the 5 when you get to that drop. Hey, stop. If you're not at the quarterback yet, get them hands elevated. You'll get a lot of passes blocked down, tips and stuff like that leads to interceptions. So it's rhythm. It's a rhythm offense. It's, everything is within that 3 and 5-step drop. Like I said, guys have to be where they are, where they're supposed to be. Because I'll give you a quick example. If you're supposed to be getting to 10 yards and making your break out, but if you're getting held up and only, quarterback's looking for you and you're not there yet, he's got to move on. Or if you're getting too deep, he's looking at you at 10 yards, breaking out, and you're getting to 12 and he's throwing, and all of a sudden somebody else is reading and picking stuff off. So like I said, that offense is all about rhythm and timing. It's getting it in, getting it out. So that's the good of it.
Okay. So what I kept hearing you say was passing, passing, passing. So would that be safe to say that therefore one of the weaknesses is that it's so pass heavy and that it doesn't focus on the running game?
Yes. And that's where you have to force yourself to run the ball. You really do. And I give credit. Once again, I'll go back to the 49ers. With the 49ers, they are so creative. Now, here's what I like, Jay. I don't want, if you run the West Coast offense, for anybody who's watching us, not why I just did the air quotes, the West Coast offense, right?
Right.
You, in my opinion, and what's his name? Pettits, or what's his name? Petzing. Okay. I got to get that down. Petzing has talked about what he said, unpredictability.
Yes.
I don't need unpredictability. I need consistency, and I need what's the other word I'm looking for? Consistency and I don't know, creativity. How's that?
Okay.
That's the word, creativity, and I don't need unpredictability because there's only so many ways you can run power, do that. I need formations, motions, creativity with your blocking scheme, and also consistency with running the ball. I can't live with 70-30. I can do 65-35, but the closer we get to 50-50 in terms of distribution of running game and passing game, I'm good with that. But, if you're going to get out here and just throw the ball all around the place, that's a recipe for disaster, especially when you're going to have, who knows, back there behind you at the quarterback position. You need to protect that young man, whoever it is. If it's Bleav, run the ball. I would rather you run the ball more than you throw the ball. You get Kyler Murray back there eventually, whether it's late this year or next year, I can see more passing. I could also see more run with your quarterback, but you got to be careful with that because he's already experienced his first major injury. So it's going to be real interesting what this West Coast offense looks like. My thing is, be creative, run the ball, and be consistent and creative. Like I said, I can live with that. But if you're gonna come out here and just throw the ball all around the place, we're gonna be right back where we started from, man.
Interesting. Okay, so that West Coast offense, the pros and cons, and we don't know yet because we haven't seen any of the. Now, I wanted to ask this. So with some offenses they're so long in terms of the play call, in terms of the
terminology
plays, the terminology. Thank you. The terminology is the West Coast offense one of those that has such long term, or does it just depend upon the coach?
It does depend on the coach. They can get really, oh God.
Is it unnecessarily long?
Yes. Yes. Man, if you miss something, it's like, and I'm sitting here trying to remember some of the play calls. I mean, I was in some that were so simple. It was like, oh, thank goodness. And I was in some that, why this Yankee X spot, or, why cross, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, oh my God, and you had, and here's the crazy part, Jay. All that could be thrown out the window as soon as you walk to the line of scrimmage with an audible or something like that. So I remember early in my days, you're like, it's like you're concentrating, you hear it, and you're walking to the line of scrimmage, and you're going across in your mind, and you think you why this, that, blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden you hear like a code color, red, blah, blah, and you're like, oh shit, I'm not even gonna say it. You're like, oh God, and then the quarterback gives you the cadence of what the new play is, and you're like, what the hell am I supposed to do? And it's like, Sad, and you're like, all right, I'll just go. Hopefully, as you get more and more comfortable with the terminology, and I was, oh God, there were a couple times, Jay, with me being released in the middle of the season and going to another team doing, and all of a sudden you had to forget what you knew all through training camp, and now you got all these new terminologies and blocking schemes and blocking codes, and man, I'm telling you, like I said, I spent many a night, with the clicker in my hand with the VCR. That's how far I'm going back. Looking at tape. Now they send these dudes home with the tablets and all this fancy stuff. I had VCR tape, but I digress. But yeah, we there's so much that goes into building this thing that it like I said, it can look so beautiful sometimes when everything's clicking on all cylinders. You get one dude out there that's not sure about what he's doing, or a step out of sync with the, like, man, we've all, you've seen those choreographed pool and you see, you can spot the one person that's not on sync or on point with everybody else. And that's exactly what happened when a play goes wrong. And unfortunately, I was a victim myself a couple times of being that one dude that was not quite on the same page as everybody else. And everybody else either saved my tail, or the one I'll give you real quick. One time, bro, I was supposed to pick something up off the edge, and I got confused and thought I was supposed to get something in the middle of the pack here. And that edge came off, and all I heard was, that was our running back. That was our running back getting hit by a free runner 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage. And now all I could do, I turned and I looked. He was laying on the ground, and it was one Jamal Anderson. All I could do was put the hand down there like, man, I'm sorry, dude.
Indeed.
He wasn't too happy with me.
Indeed. So that's how we do it. So this is Bleav in the Arizona Cardinals. We'll be hitting you later on this week. And when we hit you later on this week, again, I want to talk a little bit about film study. And I guess it's appropriate because we'll be talking about Kyler Murray as well, and what he's doing again to make himself a leader, possibly in this new regime. So we do this every week, sometimes twice a week. We'll be hitting y'all twice a week this week. And so tell a friend about what we have going on here. We are presented by Bet Online, and as we always like to say around this time, you can